Welcome to the Descenso Zone podcast, where we talk about creativity and personal growth through a lens of curiosity and humor. My guest today is an actor best known for her role on Degrassi. She stepped away from acting to travel the world, get an MBA, and become a consultant. But after a successful corporate career, she's found her way back to acting, guided by a simple philosophy: say yes now and figure it out later. We talk about our experiences as child actors, the shocking reason she left Degrassi, her pivot into an MBA, and much more. Now, let's get into the zone with Katie Lai. Katie Lai, thanks for being here. It's so nice to see you again. It's been a very, very long time.
It's got to have been at least 2 decades. I mean, I moved to the UK almost a decade ago at this point, so.
Well, it's great to see you. I know time flies. It is crazy. We first met as kids, probably both around, 11 years old?
I think it was 10 because I do remember on Super Rupert, I think Adam turned 12 before the rest of us, so he could shoot for longer according to union rules, but the rest of us still had to rap at an 8-hour day. But,
that's right. Yeah, Adam Butcher, who played the lead on Super Rupert, which is a show we met on up for YTV. Yeah, that's so funny. Once you turn 12, you're allowed to do an extra, I think, 2 hours of overtime.
I think so, yeah. But yeah, I remember that he was the only one who's allowed to do overtime, so they shot all his family scenes later and all the kids' scenes together first.
Wow, good memory, Katie. Good memory.
Only for really random esoteric things, not for important things.
I can totally relate to that. So you started as a kid, started out acting as a kid, and then you went on to act in a number of other projects, most notably Kendra and Degrassi. And then you sort of shifted gears, got more into the business world, did an MBA, I believe, and then sort of became a consultant. I want to talk about all that stuff, a lot to unpack, but I want to start with what drew you to acting as a kid initially? How did you get into that world?
So it's a funny thing because I was actually scouted off the streets in Toronto. I'm mixed race. My mom's a redhead, and we were walking around Toronto one day, and I believe it was a casting director for the play Miss Saigon, which was being put on by Mirvish Productions at the time, where they were looking for little mixed race kids to play Tam, who is the son of the 2 lead characters. And they looked at me, they're like, well, there's a mixed race kid, let's bring her in. And so I don't remember much about this. There was a documentary that I have on VHS at my parents' house at home. And that's my only real memory of it, other than being really upset because I had just had my ears pierced and I would have to take them out because Tam is a boy. And I was so worried that they were going to close. I was 3 years old, so clearly this is the biggest concern in my entire life at this point. But yeah, I remember being told not to sing along while I was on stage, because I love musicals. I always have. And the director was like, okay, I know you know the songs, but you can't sing while you're on stage. Tam doesn't have any lines. But yeah, once the run of the play was over, there were about, I think, 4 or 5 different kids playing Tam. The director said, she can take direction pretty well. You should get her an agent. So got an agent, started going out for commercials and TV shows, little spots on short films. Then my sister got into the business, then my brother got into the business. So all of us were kind of being shuttled back and forth to auditions by our poor mother, who's going, you can quit anytime. I won't mind. Yeah, if you guys ever think that, you want to quit acting, that's fine with me. And we're like, no, we love it. I had the pleasure of working with my siblings on a few things when we were younger as well, which was great.
Well, that's good for the carpooling for mom.
Yeah, exactly. We had a few auditions where my sister and I were auditioning together, and then a few where we were competition. But it was great that we just all hopped in the van and had our various auditions and then went back home.
What was that sibling relationship like? Like if you're competing against your sibling for the same role, were you supportive? Were you competitive? What was the vibe like, especially when you're kids like that?
Always supportive. Always supportive. My mom made sure of it. And we knew, even from a young age, we knew it's just business. You get rejected so much when you do all these auditions and you score maybe 1% of every audition that you've ever done. And you learn really young not to take it personally, because it honestly is nothing to do with you. And when you're a kid, especially, it's nothing to do with your ability. It's literally just how you look. So, my mom would dress us in overalls and pigtails, whereas the other kids would be going in neatly groomed and combed and wearing dresses and stuff, but we looked like actual kids. So the casting directors would be like, yes, these look like kids, let's hire them. We don't care that they can't actually act because they are 7. But we knew from an early age, it's not a competition. We're just doing this to have fun. And because we'd been to so many auditions together, a lot of the casting directors knew us as well. So we'd have a little bit of banter with the casting directors when we got there, and it's the Lai siblings, they're back again. And yeah, like I said, we also got to work with each other. So we knew that, if there's a job that Katie went for that Alex got instead, that eventually Alex and Katie will work together, and Tim's going to go off and do a bunch of commercials because they never have enough boys.
That's amazing that your family fostered that kind of dynamic. I think that's like really important, and also so important to keep you grounded and like, having a good relationship, not only with your family, but also with the work itself too, because it sounds like you had a really supportive family and a system that was set up for you to succeed. And the fact that like you understood, okay, we're going to fail. That's part of the process, but it's actually just kind of part of the fun as well. And so I think that's a really awesome setup for kids who are going to go into this world, because I think it can also go the other way.
Oh yeah.
You can also have a terrible experience as a kid and like feel pressure and feel like this sense of like competition and unworthiness and rejection. So it's really important, if you're going to go down that road, that you have someone in your life who can like foster that kind of positive relationship around it.
Absolutely. And I think as a result, when my youngest sister was born and she expressed an interest in getting into the business as well, she had all of us as mentors to tell her, yes, you're going to freeze up in auditions. You're going to bomb auditions. Some auditions you're going to suck, but you're always going to come back. Every audition is an opportunity. It's a chance to practice. It's a chance to meet the casting directors. And it's been said in many acting classes that I've taken as well, you don't need to win the job. You just need to win the room. You need to have the casting directors see that you have potential, and then they'll keep bringing you back. And then from there, it's just a numbers game.
Right. That's such a good point too, because you can get so caught up in a particular role that you're after, whereas really the big win is getting the person in the room to like you enough to bring you back. Because if they bring you back, like you say, it's just a numbers game. And so many reasons for rejection are outside of your control. So it's not even necessarily that you were bad, but you might just have a look they're not looking for, or you might look too similar to someone they've already casted. Like there's a million reasons that they could pass on you for that particular role.
Yeah, my brother actually experienced something like that within the space of about 2 weeks when he was, I think, 9 or 10. He had an audition to play, he had an audition for Tropic Thunder to play one of the little boys in that, and he didn't look Asian enough. And then he had an audition to play, I can't remember what the other role was, but they said, you look too Asian. So he was like, well, the thing is, I'm half and half. So it's both are true. However, weird reason to get rejected, and something you have no control over. You have no control over where you're born, who your parents are. So it's tough not to take that personally when your appearance is such an intrinsic part of who you are. But you have to know that it is just surface value. It's nothing to do with you as a person. It's nothing to do with your talent. It's nothing to do with how nice you were to the casting director, anything like that. And the proof is that awful people also get roles.
That they do.
Not naming names.
I mean, we can. But you and I both grew up in this world. I mean, I wonder if there's something that stuck out to you as like something that maybe people who didn't grow up in this world wouldn't understand or might misunderstand, especially in like the Canadian world.
I mean, the number one question I always get is, how do you memorize your lines? So they don't understand memorizing your lines.
That's a big one.
But I think it's just the professional adult environment that you have to adapt to as a child, because production's not going to stop because you're tired, you need a nap. Like I was taught from an early age to look adults in the eye, offer your hand, to shake their hand, please, thank you, all the manners that you can possibly require, but basically to act like a tiny adult, because production's not going to stop for you just because you are a child. There's an extra person on set called the child wrangler is usually what we call them, but there's a liaison on set to make sure that all the children are safe and that they're all accounted for. But aside from that, you are expected to be exactly the same as every other actor on set. So I think it definitely gave us more discipline as children, because you're not going to get hired if you're running around and not listening to people. I think it gave us more exposure to just really cool situations and meeting new people. Like my sister worked with the guy who played Major Bedhead on The Big Comfy Couch. And it turns out that he lived around the corner from us in Mississauga, and that his wife made all the costumes. So when The Big Comfy Couch like finished production and the studio shut down, we actually had a lot of those costumes in our basement for dress up time. And like, what kids can say that,
That's incredible.
Yeah, we had some really, really fun experiences as a result. And some, some things that they invented child labor laws for. Like my sister and I had a commercial where we had to run through this field of dried up Queen Anne's lace, and we were wearing skirts because it was supposed to be like a school uniform. And our legs were just slashed and bleeding because the dried up plants had just been ripping at us. And my mom had to go and find the on-set liaison officer and say, hey, we got to get the union in here because these kids need pants. So I don't have any permanent scars, thankfully. But if my mom hadn't been there to advocate for me, as a child who's taking direction, I don't want to go, excuse me, I'm bleeding. I just want to do what the adults are telling me to do.
That's so true, especially when you're a kid and you're in this sort of mode of like people pleasing in a way, because like you really want to do a good job. And so much of acting in a way is people pleasing. Like the director says, look to the left a little more, say it a little more like this, do it a little more like that. And so you're trying to like appease these requirements of you. And the last thing you want to do is be like complaining.
Yes.
You want to do a good job. And so you do need, especially as kids, I think those liaisons, as you say, or even just your parents to be there to like make sure that everything is, is on the up and up in terms of like how you're being treated, because it's so easy, especially when there's a schedule and a budget and all this stuff, for them to like just be in a rush and not always necessarily take those things into account. So I think it is important that those safeguards are in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also taught me how to advocate for myself. Because as you mentioned, I wanted to people please. I wanted to do a good job. I wasn't going to speak up. I was just going to suffer. And my mom went, I'm not taking my children home covered in cuts and slashes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I kind of went, okay, I do have the opportunity to speak up. It's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not going to be, they're never going to hire me again if I tell them that I need a Band-Aid. So I think it taught me that you're also able to advocate for yourself. And yes, there's a certain measure of professionalism versus just getting what you want all the time, but you don't have to put yourself aside completely just because there's a schedule or a budget. You still have agency. You're still a human being.
And it reminds me of a time when I was in a role playing a cancer patient as a kid.
Oh, no.
And part of the contract was to shave my head. And I was like, let's go. I'm ready. Let's shave it. Like I was down to do it. And they flew me out to Halifax. My dad came with me. We were doing this film. It was an Agnieszka Holland film. I forget the name of it now. I think they changed names. I think it became The Healer, it was called, with a couple of like big names in it. I only had a really tiny like day player part in it.
I'm gonna look it up anyway.
And one thing that I remember in talking about this like idea of advocating for yourself is that they said they shaved my head, and then they said, okay, time for the eyebrows. And my dad was like, that was not in the contract. We're not shaving those eyebrows off. And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. And my dad was like, it's not fine. That's going to take like 4 months for your eyebrows to go back. So they ended up like just doing like a makeup kind of version of it. And so, yeah, you need those parental figures there, because that kind of stuff can happen.
Two funny anecdotes related to that. So obviously on Degrassi, I had the world's second worst haircut only after Javier Bardem. But basically I had signed on the audition form, like, yeah, you can change my hair, whatever. So they got me into the hairdressing chair, chopped it all off, gave me a mullet with a rat tail. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to start grade 9 looking like this, the very first year of high school where I want to be cool. And I left the chair and I was like, it's fine. It's all fine. My hair had been down to my waist before. And my mom marched me back in there and went, she has to go out in public like this in real life? Fix it. So it was still a mullet, but at least I didn't have the rat tail hanging down the back.
Hey, at least you could say in grade 9, it's for Degrassi. So
yeah,
I'm still pretty cool.
I'm filming.
Yeah.
Other fun story. So my fiance is also an actor. Well, was an actor. He's a musician now, full-time musician. But as a kid, he was also an actor, which is something that we always find hilarious, is that we were both on series, like nationally broadcast series at the same time. He was in a British show called Teachers, and his character had weird male pattern balding. So he got the role, they put him in a fat suit, and then they just sat him down and shaved his head without even asking. I think they bought him like a Blink-182 CD or something to say thanks after his parents complained.
I mean, it's a good deal. Blink-182 CD is pretty good.
Yeah, sure. If you lived in a town that didn't have an HMV, so how else was he going to get it?
Right.
But yeah, he had to live in Bristol essentially while they were shooting, and they just shaved his head and then put a latex like half bald, like Friar Tuck kind of male pattern balding cap on. So the first time I found his IMDb, the first time I watched the show, I went, that can't be him. And had to look for a little freckle on his face to be like, oh my God, no, it actually is. But yeah, he wasn't told that he was going to have that done to him. His parents weren't told. He didn't sign anything. They just sat him down and shaved his head. So if I can only imagine, like if his parents had been able to advocate for him, or if he had done it himself, they'd have to find another way around it. But as a kid, you're also like, well, if I don't do this, I don't get the role anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a million stories like that. And I'm sure it's even more pronounced probably in the States and in other places. Like you're mentioning, he's from the UK, I think, right?
Yes, I live in the UK now. We met here. He's from a county called Dorset. And yeah, the union here, basically you don't have to join it. It's only for the production side of things. So any job you do could be union, could be non-union, but you as an actor yourself don't have to join the union, and therefore you don't necessarily have protections when you do join a set.
That's really interesting and kind of unusual, but I suppose it gives some flexibility for actors that they can do other things, because one of the problems or challenges I think of being like a unionized actor, especially here in Canada, is that like if you want to go do a short film or if you want to go do any sort of non-union thing, I mean, people do it, but like you're not supposed to. And so it does give you a little more flexibility, I would imagine, but it also takes away those protections, like you're saying. So you have to be careful on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I did do a community theater play actually while I was union. Community theater is obviously non-union. And interestingly, it was Miss Saigon and my baby sister played Tam, which was great. I was playing her mom. But yeah, I remember another actor was also union, but he was insisting on getting paid because he was union. And then they looked into the whole cast and they went, well, Katie, you're union as well. And I went, well, I'm not doing this to get paid. I'm doing this because I love musical theater, because I have a personal connection to Miss Saigon. So they ended up having to pay me something like $500 for the full run. And I just donated it back to the theater as a charity gesture. But yeah, it's weird that otherwise, like, it would cost this poor community theater $500 just to have me there when I volunteered. You know, I auditioned of my own volition. I wasn't there because my agent sent me. I just wanted to do it for fun. Yeah,
that's a very sweet gesture of you, first of all. But also it reminds me of one of my first things. I did community theater at Theatre Aquarius in Hamilton, Ontario here. Yeah. And I did 2 plays for them. And I think I got $100 for the run of the first play. It was like 72 shows or whatever.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then the second, and to be fair, in that first play, actually, the first play I did was The King and I got $0. The second play I actually had a larger speaking role, and I got $100. And I probably have that check framed somewhere that I doubt I ever even cashed it. But yeah, it's for the love of the game sometimes, right?
Absolutely. And I've started doing that again recently, just doing student productions for some of the film schools here, because London has a bunch of them. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I were union, because they're obviously not union sets.
Right. What about as a kid? Was the educational part of it ever a factor for you? I know when you're a kid on set, you have to have like 2 hours of like tutoring a day. What was that experience like for you? Did you find yourself struggling to keep up in school? Was it easy for you? What was that experience like?
I usually knew when I'd be shooting, especially on Super Rupert. There was a much more consistent schedule. So I would just get my homework in advance and then do it while I was there. And I was lucky that I had very understanding teachers who would give me the homework and say, you know, if you have any questions, just come see me at recess when you're back. And it was, it was really easy for me to keep up because we had that 2-hour mandate. I feel like if we didn't have that set aside for us, I don't know if I'd ever get around to it. I'd be up till like 10 p.m. as a 12-year-old. But the thing about when I hit high school was in Degrassi, the schedule was a lot more ad hoc. it wasn't as far in advance as it was with Super Rupert. So I'd sometimes just have to miss school. So hilariously, my school gave me elite athlete status because the elite athletes at my school might have to miss class randomly for a tournament that's out of province. And I cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. So my mom thought it was hilarious that I was an elite athlete at a football high school.
That's so funny because it also resonates with me because in my experience, like I had some challenges with the schooling because I was, for Naturally Sadie, primarily I was away for like most of grade 9 and grade 10. I barely went to school. And so that presented a challenge for my teachers and for my parents as well, where, I would have a French teacher in particular who didn't believe that I was good at French. And so, it didn't help that my mom was a French teacher. And so, that was helpful. But she thought this French teacher I had thought I was cheating. And so she would make me come in on Saturdays to write the tests. And so, on top of like a full work week, I would also go in to my high school on a Saturday, write a test. And then eventually she realized, okay, he actually is good at French. And then she stopped making me come in. But yeah, I had challenges like that. And then also my principal, shout out Miss Fortino, wanted me to wanted to kick me out of the school because it was causing problems for the teachers. They had to set aside homework and sort of, send stuff to my, to set so that I could do my homework and send stuff with my parents. And it was extra work for them. And so the principal was kind of we don't want to deal with this. And my parents, to their credit, fought back and they were like, hey, you have a bunch of athletes at the school who kind of go and take off and do other extracurricular activities. He's essentially like that. And so it's that same thing you're saying, this elite athlete status where it's why should they be given preferential treatment for doing an extracurricular when I'm also doing an extracurricular, And so I have to give my folks a lot of credit for pushing back on that.
Big time. Yeah. And one of the funniest things is one of the teachers that was pushing back the most and was, well, you can't just miss school. You can't just skip randomly. And you can't just leave whenever you feel like it. He was my drama teacher. He was Neve Campbell's dad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Neve Campbell's dad was my drama teacher and got mad at me for skipping drama school to go to set.
To do actual acting. There's definitely some stuff within him at work there. That's not a you problem. That's a him problem.
Oh yeah, big time. I dropped drama after that and never took it again. So
it's funny, I took drama, but I never had any interest in doing the plays and stuff like that. I don't know what that was. I became interested in stand-up and did that afterwards. But yeah, the plays at school at least never really interested me. And I think my drama teacher experienced some chagrin about that. But I did do the newscasts because we would have TVs in our school. So I would do the newscasts and stuff. And I would make little videos and stuff. So that was my sort of way of creative contribution, I guess, to high school. But yeah, that was fun. But was there anything outside of acting that you enjoyed doing growing up, or was that sort of the main focus? It can kind of become all consuming in a way.
It absolutely can. And I remember one year my mom was commenting we had to do taxes as children. And she's like, yeah, this year you guys have made more than some adults do because we were just working so consistently. But I was also piano. I was competing in piano. I got up to grade 8 piano, grade 3 harmony and theory. I was taking singing lessons. I was in a couple choirs growing up. I was what else did I do as a kid? I mean, every kid goes through ballet, rhythmic gymnastics, all that stuff. And as I've already mentioned, not for me. I'm a double threat, unless the third one is something weird like archery. I am an archer, and that also started in high school.
That's very cool. Can we talk about the finance of it all a little bit? Just because I know this is an uncomfortable thing sometimes for people, but I think it's really interesting to talk about, especially as a kid, because when you're a kid, part of your payment gets set aside for you to protect you until you're 18. I think that's a really very common. Yes, and I think that's a really good idea and a really important thing. But also, it's you're making good money for a kid. Now we're in Canada, so it's not U.S. life-changing money or anything. Not Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus money. But how do you process that as a kid? Are you trying to are you like wanting to buy a car or a toy, or like being like, how do you handle the finance of it all as a kid who's like actually making more money than the average kid?
So I'm covering my face in shame because when I turned 18 and I got my check, I bought a car. But I'm extremely lucky that my dad has managed my finances basically since I started earning when I was 3. And he put all of our earnings, he pooled all 3 kids' earnings into a joint RESP, which is our registered education savings plan in Canada. So we all had a big pool of money to go to university or college. And because we pooled it and because it started when we were very, very young, the investment paid massive dividends, and we were all able to go to university without any loans at all, which was just, I mean, fantastic financial management from my dad, and amazing foresight as well. Even to the point where I was able to go back to take a college course in coding when I was 25. There was still money left in the RESP at that point. So that even the tuition, like over 10 years ago, it was still going, which was, fantastic. But when I got, so as you mentioned, some money is protected until the child comes of age, thanks to Gary Coleman's parents stealing all of his money. The unions basically put that in the payment clauses that a portion is set aside in a trust fund for the child. And so when I turned 18 and when I got my check, I went and bought a 2007 Toyota Yaris, which is not the flashiest car and not the wisest investment. Being a Toyota, it was still running 12 years later, so big ups on that one. But yeah, the Yaris was teeny tiny. You could like feel the wind buffeting you about as if you were like driving in the wintertime. As a result of that car, I couldn't stay in a dorm in my first year of uni. My parents were like, well, you have this car, drive it to uni. So I drove, I took the bus to York University when I started first year, but then when I changed to U of T, I just drove onto campus and then spent a ton of money on insurance and gas and parking and maintenance and oil changes and upkeep. But yeah, not the wisest investment, I think, and not the coolest car that I could have spent all that money on. Just drop it with absolutely zero financing, no payments, paid in cash immediately, drive off the lot with it with like 6 kilometers on it.
Hey, that's still pretty cool, especially when, it's your first car, you get some freedom, you get to drive around. I mean, that there is something to that. I think, credit to you for just buying a Yaris and not some crazy car, because, not that we made like crazy money as Canadians, but like you could have that, that was still a responsible choice, I would say.
I think so. And I've always been partial to Toyotas. My first one was a 4 times hand-me-down that used to be my dad's company car. And I think that's why I even looked at Toyota in the first place. Because, they're not cool, but they're very reliable.
Fair enough. I would argue, though, that the Toyota 86 or the Supra is pretty cool. That said, we can set that aside, because I want to talk about Degrassi a little bit, because I think that's not just a credit, that's a cultural phenomenon, especially here in Canada, and went on for so long. There were so many iterations of it. I wonder, what was that experience like for you on a day-to-day basis in your role as Kendra? And is there anything surprising that our audience might be interested to hear?
Well, when I got the audition, I had no idea what it was. And my mom was like, oh my God, Degrassi, that's been on forever. That was on the 80s. I grew up with that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they're bringing it back. And so no pressure, Mom. But we went shopping specifically for an outfit because, the character's sporty but a little nerdy. So what are we going to do? And then, I remember we got a little tank top that had a sparkly number 33 on it, which also happened to be the year my grandma was born. So it was my good luck shirt. But it looked athletic, even though I, again, am not. But I remember I went through, I think, 3 different auditions, and just sitting there, oh God, the feeling after an audition that you think you nailed, but you're not quite sure. And there were other people there and you're sizing them up. You're like, oh, I don't know. That person doesn't really look like I imagined the character. And like, ooh, how can I make myself look better than that person? And I remember just sitting there and waiting, and like that stress ball in your chest. And one day I was in grade 8 at St. Mark Elementary School, and my teacher went, oh, Katie, you have a guest, in the middle of class. And I went, what? And she opened the door, and my principal and my mom were there with a big sign that said, Kendra Mason, you're going to Degrassi High.
Wow, that's crazy.
it was, and my class went nuts because they'd all been sitting like, oh my God, I hope she gets it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, we just basically had a big party right then and there. It was amazing. It was such a good feeling. And then the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome started to sneak in because I was joining in season 2 where there'd already been, established characters and the actors had already established relationships with each other and their characters. And I was like, okay, so how am I going to fit in? And I remember, I was an awkward teenager in the first place. Who wasn't? And with that haircut, it was not helping. But yeah, it just, I did not fit in. I didn't fit in. Had a few of the kids make comments like, oh, what are you doing back? I thought you were a daily. Or like, oh, aren't you an extra? Why are you in the green room with us? And just like, yeah, really, really harsh. And then at the rap party, like, oh, you can't even dance. Why are you trying? And I was like, wow, okay, guys, cool. Nice.
Crazy. So there was like a cliquey sort of vibe to some of those. Some of that cast, especially when I guess the ones who'd been there from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, they set the computer password in our tutoring room to 8 is enough, referring to the number of cast members.
Wow. Yeah. So you had a tough experience on that show, just from an emotional standpoint. Did that leak into your role in any way? Do you feel like did because when you're experiencing like essentially bullying on a personal level, I would imagine that in some ways affecting your performance or on screen time. Do you think that impacted you at all?
I think a little bit, but I mean, as we've talked about already, as a child, you are taught to be so professional and so on it. So it didn't matter what was being said before the director called action. As soon as that call was made, as soon as we hear, rolling, I'm in it. Doesn't matter. Stop talking to me.
Well,
I'm not me anymore.
To your credit, you say that like that's like normal, like obvious behavior, but like that's like an impressive skill set to have to be able to set that aside and just like do your job, because you have to take some credit for that, because I don't think just anyone could do that. I think that takes a certain kind of actor and a certain kind of person to be able to like get through that discomfort and, do your job. I think that's like really impressive, honestly.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I didn't see it as having a choice, to be quite honest. I can do whatever when the cameras are off. I can go and hide in my dressing room. I can go and hang out with my mom. But as soon as the cameras are on, I'm here to do a job. I'm going to do a job. And then after they call cut, I'm just going to walk away. Don't talk to me. So that was the approach that I ended up having to take, because it was just the nitpicking was constant. I was like, I've been in so many scenes with you. What do you mean? What's your name? Like, mean for no reason. And then when other kids joined the cast as well, and they were accepted into the clique, I was like, okay, I don't know. Is it just me then? Is it the hair? Is it the hair? Is it the haircut? Is it the hair? I don't know.
Wow. That's so crazy to hear. I'm sorry to hear you had that experience. Like, so is there anyone from the cast who you would say like was nice to you, or you still are connected with, or is that sort of like cut them off once the show wrapped?
Well, the only person I would consider myself friends with was the girl who played Nadia, Moni Yassir, and I clearly fell out of touch with her because I went to look her up on Facebook and found out she died a couple years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so not that close, I guess. But yeah, she and I bonded because she was the girl in a wheelchair. She also was experiencing very similar comments from the rest of the cast as well, and we were both excluded together. But that means that we ended up being friends. We had sleepovers at each other's houses, even though she lived in North York and I lived in Mississauga, our poor parents. We went shopping. We saw Pirates of the Caribbean together. Like we really bonded. We saw each other a couple times after we both quit the show as well. But as happens with age and with friendships, the proximity no longer being there, it's not top of mind, and you end up drifting to other friends groups. But Lauren Collins was always a sweetheart all of the time. She and I knew each other. She's worked with, I think, everyone in my family at this point. We knew each other from babies, essentially. And I ran into her on the set of The Strain about 10 years ago, which was a vampire kind of almost like Walking Dead rip-off, but with vampires instead of zombies. And we were both playing pregnant women who were being like harvested for their blood, for their type B positive blood. And I was a featured extra because I was knitting, and that's considered a special skill. And she had a walk-on role. So we didn't see each other in the separate green rooms. And then when we got on set, I went, "Oh my God, Lauren." And she's like, "Oh my God, Katie." So still remembered me, which was lovely. She's so nice. And I think she works in a casting house now. So my sister and my friend Cassie see her all the time now.
Well, that's great that there were some positive experiences
Yeah.
there then, because like it's especially when you're on a show for so long. I mean, you did like over like how many episodes did you do? Like 20 something episodes of
Something
Degrassi?
like that. Yeah, I was on for 2 seasons.
Yeah, that's quite a long time, especially to experience this level of bullying, which seems like crazy. It's so interesting because like my experience has always been like a familial vibe on set. It's always been like a camaraderie and like we're in this together kind of thing. And like I kind of heard rumors about Degrassi having some dynamics that were like not quite like that. My cousin, Mark Bernardi, who was on Degrassi for a short time as well, he didn't really experience that, I don't think, although he also had a hair thing happen to him. I think they wanted to give him a haircut that he didn't like, so he just showed up with a haircut himself that he got, and he got in trouble. A story for another time. But yeah, it's an interesting thing that I wonder what it was about that show and that dynamic. Do you think it's like it like becomes an ego thing once you've like been on a hit show for a while and like, you start to build up this ego and maybe they're worried that you're like stealing some of the starlight or something? Like what do you think that is?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, because I remember going out after we wrapped the last episode of season 2. There were about 40 of us because it was all the kids and all their parents. And we went out to a restaurant and we had this long table down the restaurant, and the waiter came up to me and I was sitting next to one of the cast members and he goes, "Oh, so what are we all celebrating here today? Is this a birthday party?" And they went, "We're on Degrassi." And he was like, "Cool. So what are we celebrating today? Is it like a birthday party?" And like the fact that they weren't, the waiter wasn't completely impressed and like, oh my God, you're on Degrassi. Like the fact that they weren't recognized really seemed to chafe them. And I was like, I don't think I like you as a person. I don't mind that you don't like me.
Yeah, that's there definitely is a sense of, especially when you're a kid actor or a teen actor, excuse me, you can like become, you need people around you to ground you, because if you don't, you can get that way. It's very easy to feel self-important.
Yeah. And I think it was especially, it was a big contrast for me, especially having come from Super Rupert just the year before, because I don't know if you remember much about that set. Like we had a blast. We were playing hide and seek in all the sets. We were running behind all the facades because it was just the repainted Anne of Green Gables set. Like we were wrestling, which was especially hilarious because Brian was like 3 times my size. And I do remember trying to get him in a show cold, and I think he just lifted me off the ground. But like the makeup artists, the hair people, one of the directors ended up directing me on Degrassi as well, and put me in scenes that he didn't need to, that I wasn't even written into, just because we'd had that bond on Super Rupert.
Steve Scaney, probably, right?
Steve Scaney,
yes, who I just had on the podcast recently, and we reminisced as well about some of that stuff. And I think me and you probably, I think if I remember correctly, were the ones who got in trouble for playing hide and seek on the set of Super Rupert. But yeah, it was such a fun environment. So to hear that like you had a different experience on Degrassi is really interesting, because personally, I've never come up against that. Even as a day player, like when I was a day player on a few small role TV series things, it was like I always felt pretty welcome. And especially as a day player, it can be difficult because you're just in and out. And so it's hard to like form a connection and be friends, and then you're gone the next day. But I am fortunate enough to have never had a negative experience in that way, but I also never worked on Degrassi. So who knows, it could have just been, all this to say, I don't think it was necessarily a you thing. I think it could have just been a bunch of kids who kind of got a little big for their britches a little bit. And honestly, it's hard to even fault them for that, because it's like so much of that is like how the people around you are behaving, how your parents are grounding you. I mean, it's very easy to get a big head. And I think we see that especially more pronounced in like the States, where shows become so big. But even here, like Degrassi was one of the big shows, and many people have gone on to do great things from Degrassi. And so I can understand how there would be some like, I don't know if the word is fear or like hesitation around a new person coming in. I think that, would be, I could see how that would be something that would feel threatening to those to those original cast members, maybe.
Yeah, I don't fault them at all. We were kids. It was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
If I if I were to see one of them in the street, I'd say hello. And I
sure.
did run into a few cast members, like one at an audition when we were maybe 20, and one at a Jack Astor's where they were waiting tables, saw me, said hello, and then immediately gave the table to somebody else. But I've also waited on some of the other cast members at certain restaurants that I was working at the time, and like we're perfectly civil. Sure, I'll never be friends with any of them, but honestly, it was so long ago. And kids are kids. It's true. Kids are kids. And once again, I didn't think I had the agency to go to a responsible adult and say, "Hey, this is happening to me. Can you
Right.
do something about it?" I thought, okay, I don't want to make waves. And as you mentioned, Degrassi was huge, especially at the time. I don't want to end up in the tabloids. I don't want to witch hunt. I don't want to he said, she said. I'm just going to piece. So that's why I ended up leaving, was because I was like, I get like, I'm giving myself high blood pressure just thinking about having to go to set again. I don't want to do this. But I also didn't want it to get out that these cast members were not as lovely as some of their characters were. So when I went to the producers and I said, "Hey, I want to dip," they went, "Oh, but we love our Kendra character." And I kind of went, "Oh, but I want to do like theater and stuff, and I want to do more auditions, and my contract says that I'm tied to Degrassi for so long, and I don't know my availability, and I can't go to auditions and stuff." And they were like, "Oh, this diva wants more airtime. Well, goodbye." So I mean, it's never been confirmed, but I do have a feeling that's probably why I never worked in Toronto again. But who's to say? And again, I don't blame them either, because for a 14-year-old to come up to you and say, "Give me more airtime or I'm walking," that is diva behavior. So I get it. And I don't hold a grudge against anybody.
Do you think that your approaching the producers at that time was really about more like screen time? Because it seems like if you're being, treated as less than because of the amount of screen time, that could have been part and parcel of it. Like that's tied to this idea of like, well, I am an important character on this show. Why don't you, let me prove it to these people who are treating me as not an important character? Or were you just kind of tired of Degrassi and wanted to move on to other things?
I was not tired of Degrassi. I was not tired of Kendra. I could have played Kendra for years. Honestly, I loved her as a character. She was so much fun, so sassy. I loved just getting to explore more storylines as an actor as well. I was sick of the bullying. And yes, it's true, I was being used less and less. And I think maybe that was contributing to the attitude towards me. Like when I did show up on set, it's like, "Oh, we've had all these fun times without you, and now you're here and you don't fit in. So we're going to continue to exclude you because we had fun without you." Maybe that's the case. But I mean, I don't think I, as a person back then or even now, would ever genuinely go to a producer and say, "Write me in more," because that's so entitled. And they've got a plan, like they've got the scripts and the storylines already mapped out. And for me to say, actually change all the work you've already done because I want to be in more, I would never have done that. And I don't know why that's the excuse I ended up going with, but it certainly could not have improved people's opinions of me.
It's a perfectly natural feeling though. Like I totally understand it, especially when, and like I'm still, not close, but I'm still friends with, the people on Naturally Sadie in particular. And I recently had Jacob Kramer on the podcast. It was so nice to reconnect with him, and we hung out and grabbed a beer, and it was just like so great to reconnect with him. But I remember when he first came onto the show, he was kind of like you in the sense that he came on in, I think the second season. And so we had like this little core four already established. And then Jake comes on as like the sort of love interest for Sadie, the main character. And like, Jake and I very quickly became friends, but like, I remember an initial feeling of like, oh no, he's like going to steal my thunder a little bit. Like this guy, he's coming in, he's being like the tall, hot, blonde character who's like the love interest. And, like, there was like a couple episodes where like my character didn't appear in the episode anymore. And then you feel like this thing of like, oh, like, what do I, like you can definitely feel that, especially when you're a kid and you don't have like a fully built prefrontal cortex that like can handle this kind of thing. And so like, I totally get where you're coming from. And luckily, like, it was such a positive experience for me that like it didn't become an issue. And like Jake and I were really close, and the whole cast and I were quite close during that time too. So it was like a nice experience, and that like helped foster that me get over that feeling. Whereas for you, I feel like you didn't have that camaraderie that could help you get over that feeling. And so like, I totally don't fault you at all for what you did. I think that's like totally a natural, normal thing to have happened, especially to a kid.
Yeah. And huge props to my parents for not being like stage parents about it and going, no, you have to stay, like, this is your job, or like not being like, oh, we're raising an actor, you got to go act. Like for them to say, okay, we understand that your mental health comes first. That was also a huge amount of support. And I'm so grateful to them for helping me get through that period in my life where I was just, and after I quit Degrassi, losing a bunch of friends that I had in my high school because they were only friends with me because I was famous. So yeah, my parents helped me a lot. Just recognize, as with everything in acting, it's not personal, it's not me. And this is, how you can grow from it.
If you're enjoying this podcast, do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button. Another way you can support me is to check out my kids' book. It's called Tiffy and Spiffy Meet a Kangaroo. It's a really sweet story about two preschooler best friends. One is a girl, one is a genie, and they go on magical adventures. It's on Amazon, and there is a link in the description. Please go check it out. And now, let's get back into the zone. I wanted to touch on this idea of working like as a server and also being an actor, because so many actors have that experience of working other jobs. What was that like for you? Like you not only just as a server, but also you pivoted to like get an MBA and become a consultant. Like, what was that experience like for you in terms of your shifting gears? Because like for me, that's something that I've done a handful of times, and it's never been an easy decision. So for you, what did that feel like?
So thankfully, because of that terrible haircut, after I grew it out, I was almost unrecognizable. And as a result, I was able to fly under the radar at most places. The only time I mentioned I've waited on some of the other cast members, and they'd waited on me as well. They only knew it was me when I introduced myself. A lot of them went, wait, what? Whoa. So the hair was a blessing and a curse in that sense. But weirdly, my last consulting project before I left Canada and moved to the UK was out in Calgary, and it was for a supply chain environment. And I was the only consultant working on that project. And I was basically helping them overhaul their warehousing and their, there's a lot of boring business jargon, but basically making everything better in terms of when they buy things, how much they buy, and making sure that they have receivers and buyers for that product. So they were supplying a lot of convenience stores, and we needed to make sure that they were only buying what they needed, when they needed, and checking on expiration dates, and then making sure they had pallets clear in the warehouse so that they could actually put it somewhere. So I was doing that project. That was from, I want to say, March-ish to September of 2018. So I was 28 at that point. Degrassi was a distant memory. And I did this project. It was great. Went into the VP of Finance's office to wrap it up. Shook his hand. He said, "Thank you so much for being here, Catherine. We really enjoyed the project. Any chance that you want to stay on full time?" And I went, "Oh, I already have a visa to move to London, so no, thank you. I don't want to live in Calgary." But I said, "Great, yeah. Here's everything you'll need for continuous improvement. Here's everything you need to keep the changes in place for longevity. Do you have any questions for me?" And he said, "Yeah. What was it like working with Drake?" And I went, "What?" This came out of nowhere. Like, I don't look like that. My name is Catherine. Your daughter babysat my dog. What are you talking about? And it turns out that his daughter had actually recognized me about 3 months before, Googled me to do a comparison and to make sure. Then she was like, I never said a word until my last day on the site. And I was just like, I am so glad that nobody else knew that while I was here, because I don't think I'd be taken very seriously as a consultant otherwise.
That's so funny. Yeah, I had experiences like that. Like even after I was done acting, I kind of stopped acting around university times and focused on school. But then I also was like, I need a job. So I got a job at Campus Crew, and then I later got a job at Bell Mobility. And it was so surreal because I was not that I was famous, but I was still like to a degree recognizable to a certain subset of like tweens or whatever. And so like I would be working a shift at Campus Crew and people would come in just to like gawk at me and not like buy stuff. Like they would just come in to like point at me or like whisper or whatever. And like I got this really good radar for that. So I could like really tell when people were doing stuff like that. But it also made me feel not uncomfortable. Like it was always like usually nice encounters, but it was also weird. It was like, I don't always know how to process this, how to handle it. Like, what do I say? I'm also at work. Like, should I be talking to them? They want a picture now. It's like, there's like a weirdness to it. And that goes back to sort of what we were talking about before of like the not United States money of it all, where it's like, oh, all of a sudden we can just not retire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you kind of feel objectified, don't you?
Maybe a little bit, but it was just a weird experience. But I want to step back from that and take a page out of your old employer's book and ask you the question: what was it like working with Drake?
I mean, yeah, he was just some guy, And I remember the first time I saw a billboard with his face on, I was like, Aubrey, what are you doing up there? I remember in high school, I think it was him and one of the other cast members actually started getting like radio play, and they'd be like, oh, this is Aubrey Graham. And I'd be like, oh, that's cool. Yay. I know him. And then, yeah, the billboard thing, I was like, when did that happen? When did what's going? So clearly we did not keep in touch. But I was like, our moms are friends on Facebook. This is weird.
I wanted to ask you though, like you transitioned into this more consulting role, but now you're interested in coming back to acting. What was it that you were missing, and how has that transition like shaped up for you now?
So I think having been an actor has been really beneficial to my career as a consultant because A, do not get nervous giving presentations. B, consultants generally only tend to work on a project for 6 to 8 months at a time. So I'm used to that kind of turnover of people, of situations, of framework, of ideologies even. And I get bored in a regular office role, so if you don't have projects to work on and you're just doing the same thing day in, day out, I don't think I could do that. I fell into consulting by accident. After I graduated, one of my neighbors went, oh, my company's hiring a bunch of graduates and you just graduated. Do you want to come try out being a consultant for a while? And I went, well, I graduated with an English degree. And he said, yeah, we want diversity. That's fine. So I flew down to Atlanta, Georgia. I did an assessment center where they gave me basically a problem to work on. And by the end of the day, I had to give a presentation on how I would solve it. And by the time my plane touched back down in Toronto, they were like, you got the job. And I spent the next, that would have been 2014. So I spent the next 4 years flying all over North America and Southern Africa to work in probably about a dozen different industries. And then 2018 is when I decided to move to the UK just to take advantage of the working holiday visa, which was back then only for under 30s. Now it's for under 35s. So any Commonwealth resident or any Commonwealth citizen can be a resident of another Commonwealth country for, I think it's 3 years now, without needing sponsorship or a visa. Wow. So I went, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll just try that out. And got a job at my old company in marketing this time. Didn't love it. That's when I took my MBA in 2020 because my visa ran out and I went, oh, I want to stay in London. I'm not done yet. And then the pandemic was like, oh, you're staying in London. So thankfully, that was also the perfect time to do any kind of studying because there was nothing else going on. I had nothing to entertain me. So why not just take a business degree? So I got my MBA, graduated 2021, and then went back to work for a consulting firm, and this time just all over the UK. And again, it's just, you always have a changing project that you're working on. You're always meeting new people. You've always got that and the number one the number one comment I always get from consultants and from clients alike is that I have a ton of energy and how am I always on? And I'm like, oh, I'd tell you, but I don't want you to look up my IMDb.
Yeah, it certainly has helped with like presentations and just being comfortable, and also with rejection as well, because like
Yes,
you face rejection in the real world and you're like, "Pff, this is nothing now," you know? So I think it can certainly be helpful if you frame it in that way.
absolutely.
It's really interesting too that you've had this sort of career that's spanned across like the creative and like the more like administrative, like although the problem solving of the consultancy is a creative thing, I think as well. I
Big
know you
time.
have this philosophy of, say yes now and figure it out later. And we can sort of see that through some of your story. Where did that come from, and how has that helped you?
You know what? I don't really know. I think the earliest example I can think of it is probably when I decided to become a consultant, because I was just working at a phone tree kind of office pool back then. I was a customer service representative for a telephone and email company, and I was bored. I was sitting there. I was like, well, okay. When I got this opportunity to become a consultant, I went, I don't know what that is. I don't know what they do. And 12 years later, I still don't have an elevator pitch for what is it that you do. I don't know. I fix things, kind of, not really. I don't know. But I went, yeah, all right, let's give it a try. Why not? It sounds like fun. And then same thing with coming to London. I went, oh wow, the under 30 visa. I'm turning 28. I guess I better get to London. And just, I think life's a lot more exciting if you just say yes and then figure it out as you go, instead of just sitting there going, what if, what if. Like my first ever solo vacation was to the Bahamas because none of my friends could come with me. So I went, you know what? I'm going to go by myself. And when I got there, I decided I'm going to take a diving lesson. And you know what? Now I'm an advanced open water scuba diver, and I've I've gone diving in like, I don't know, 12 different notable diving locations around the world. And anywhere I go, I bring my wetsuit just in case there's diving there. So you find things that surprise you in a positive and a negative way. Like I ended up almost getting trafficked in South Africa. So that was a fun time because I went, oh, I'm going to do a horseback safari outside of Johannesburg. Oh, June is actually winter time in South Africa, and the sun's going to set at 5 p.m. And you're going to come back into the city in the dark in what they call a load shed, which is when all of the lights go out because they need to save electricity. So you're just going to be in the dark, lost with no GPS, wandering around trying to find your hotel. So, but it turned out okay when I ended up bribing some people who worked at the train station to walk me back to my hotel. So I survived. It's fine. I told my mom about this already, so she won't have a heart attack hearing this.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's good. It's good that you've told her already, because that is a scary story. But it does speak to just this idea of saying yes to things and being open to stuff. And yes, it can backfire for sure.
Yeah.
But I think being open is so important, and it allows you to explore things and find things that you wouldn't have otherwise found. And that sort of leads into my next question. As we come to the end of the podcast, Katie, thank you so much for being here, by the way. I always like to ask about a time that you stepped outside of your comfort zone. And from that story alone, there's seems like a lot, but is there anything else that jumps to mind?
I was in an indie band when I lived in Toronto. We did a tour of the Maritimes. I've gotten back into acting, which has been just incredible. I've done 3 short films and 2 commercials in the last year. And that's terrifying because I have a full-time job and I'm relying on it for my visa. So I only have a certain number of vacation days, and I don't know what to do if those two ever come into conflict, but I'll figure it out at that point. Said yes to going on a date with the man who's now my fiance, said yes to adopting the ugliest dog I've ever seen and was with him for 10 years. I don't think I have much of a comfort zone, to be honest, because I don't like turning down experiences. I don't like thinking about what if that had been the best thing I've ever done. And that's why I have a hoard of hobby equipment at my parents' garage, including scuba tanks, horseback riding equipment, some of my archery stuff. Yeah. I collect my old sewing machine because it doesn't have a plug for the UK. I just have a ton of things that relate to things that I've said yes to, which maybe try renting equipment next time, Catherine. Maybe that's a good idea. But yeah, I think just every day is a new version of a comfort zone because you're always learning, you're always evolving. So it's not that hard to expand. Maybe not go fully outside, but just expand it a little bit. Walk a different way to work, or try a different coffee shop. It's just making life interesting.
I couldn't agree more. I think leaving no stone unturned is a good way to live your life, and a good way to just find out what you like. What are you interested in? And also what you don't like, right?
Yes.
What you don't want in your life. And so, doing that, I think, is a great way. And you're a great example of that. Is there anywhere you want people to look for your work, or anywhere people can watch your short films or anything like that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram. It's What Is the Stars, all one word, no underscores or anything. I've been posting some of the behind the scenes stuff for my latest student film, and once that's up, I'll put that up as well. Should probably link to my demo reel or something on Instagram at some point. But yeah, Instagram right now is the only thing I really use. I have a TikTok, but I don't use it. And I have a Discord, but I don't use it. And I don't think anyone's on Facebook anymore. But yeah, you can follow me. What is the Stars? I will respond to DMs if you have any questions.
Amazing. Well, good luck with your renewed acting career. I wish you success, and hopefully we'll see you in a lot more stuff. And thank you so much for being here. It was great to reconnect with you.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And yeah, great to see you again after all these years.